All right, good morning, everybody. We're just going to give it a minute or two here for people to join, and then we'll get started. Hey, good morning. Thanks for joining, everybody. Just going to give it a minute or here for people to jump in the webinar, and then we'll get started here. Morning, everyone. Just going to give it a couple more seconds here before we get started.
Like you are very prompt. You're very prompt. Let's go. We're here. We're ready.
Definitely. Well, we can, looks like there's a couple more people joining. Awesome. Thanks for taking the time to sit in here today, everybody. We'll go ahead and get started. I'm joined here today with Kelly Duckhorn and Kathy Hoyha, and really excited. They're going to be going over 5 customer lists to target immediately and ways to grow your share of wallet. Just a little housekeeping before we pass it over to Kathy here. We are there's Chris as well. He's joining us. But if you have any questions, put the questions in the chat. We're going to get to the questions at the end here. We are recording the webinar today. We'll be sending out the recording afterwards. So if you're scrambling to take notes, we are going to send out the recording afterwards. So don't feel that you got to scramble there. Yeah, with that, I'm going to pass it off to Kathy here, who's going to kick things off.
Awesome. Thanks, Zach, so much for doing this so seamlessly. And it's like clockwork, and you make it really easy. So I appreciate the time, and I appreciate Kelly being here and joining us on this webinar. We really are excited to talk about this topic and hope that you will jump in to the chat box with questions so that it can be more dynamic of a presentation. And I know that Kelly has a lot to contribute to this topic. So we're just going to go ahead and jump right in. So let me just, there you go. So here's what we're going to do in the next little while here. Here's the agenda and the focus. Talk about growth opportunities through segmentation. I know that you hear about segmentation all the time. Segment your customer, segment your list, segment this, segment that, and I get it. But unless you feel like you've got the right tools or the right sort of initiative or the right kind of focus on that, it could be a little bit overwhelming or a little bit unwieldy. So we're going to talk about 5 different ways to do that. Offer a couple of suggestions with boots on the ground examples and color commentary for sure from Kelly. We're going to look at the traditional approach to segmenting lists compared to the more predictive analytics approach, show how things have traditionally been done relative to how they can be done. And then Kelly's contribution really heavy on the now what. So you've gone ahead and you've segmented these lists. Now, what do you do with it? What do you do with those segmented lists? And then also looking at more opportunities to gain a share of wallet. So thanks again for joining. And I'm just gonna, before I hand it over to Kelly to introduce herself, just say that the industry is at a very pivotal moment right now. I don't need to tell you that we've gone through so much change, so much evolution in the past 2 years in particular, and DTC and e-commerce and selling online through all the different channels has become more valuable and more important than ever before. We're at a crossroads. We're at a crossroads of the industry embracing data. We're at a crossroads of how much more we can do with it moving ahead. So yeah, great. So Kelly, please let me invite you to go ahead and introduce yourself and some initial thoughts on the theme for today.
Hi all, and again, thank you for taking time out of your busy days. I've been with I've been in the Napa Valley wine industry my entire professional life, with the beginnings at Duckhorn Vineyards. My parents are Dan and Margaret. So I've been kind of from the late 70s until the early 90s, just watching, as Kathy so aptly stated, the customer acquisition, customer data piece of our industry has changed significantly. We used to keep track of all of our customers on recipe cards back in the day. So I do come with a kind of a long arc of interacting with people, trying to figure out how to get key information from them. So this topic that we're going to present to you today is really rooted in data and making sure that the data that you capture is relevant to what you want to do. So I would, with your customers. So I would say, maybe just as a little thought bubble for the rest of this presentation, if you don't already know the answer to this question, what do you want to do with every customer that you interact with? And, currently, my role is general manager at Baldacci Family Vineyards. We're very small, so I am probably too much in the weeds on a lot of this stuff, but that's just born out of, we don't have an IT department. So I'm looking at trying to always kind of steer our ship in the right direction. And I am a big fan of data. So there you go.
Great. Kelly, thank you. And so hang on a second. So I have a great visual of your recipe cards with following the customers. So is it like, you know, in the old school libraries and like the Dewey Decimal System, when you would go and sort of page through the drawers of index cards? Was it like that?
It was. They were oversized, and we had boxes that held, well, as you ran out of the alphabet, you added a new box. So anyway, and it was something Smithsonian, to be sure.
That's the best. That's the best. Great. Thank you for sharing that. All right, Kelly. So here we go. So list number one, club members at risk, right? Let's have a look at this. So traditionally, how did you identify, how did you know when customers were at risk? What was that like? You know, did you go back to the recipe cards? Were you looking at spreadsheets? You know, how did that happen traditionally speaking? We're anecdotally again, from the Enolytics perspective, what we're looking at is people would say, well, you know, we think that customers fall off between 12 months and 18 months. And so we're going, okay, so that's sort of the kind of the anecdotal part. But is that true for every club that you have? Is it true for your cab, or is it true for your Chardonnay, or is it true for what is the granularity of the clubs, and what does, you know, who is at risk in the different clubs at what time? So this is an example of taking a more analytical approach to it. There's actually an algorithm running in the background that can help us identify customers who are at high risk or low risk, or just in between, maybe average. But then here is just a little bit more granularity around different clubs. Different clubs have different attrition rates, and people drop off at different times. So rather than going kind of like this, you can get definitely more granular about identifying club members at risk as one of your first lists to look at. So Kelly, you've identified the segment. Talk to us about now what? What do we do once we've identified the segment?
Well, I think, Kathy, you brought up a great point. Again, a little thought bubble for everybody in the audience. What are your membership programs, and what on each membership program would be a couple of risk metrics that you might want to study? So as Kathy pointed out, we have a very small program. We only have 2 layers, 2 membership programs. And so they are fundamentally different when we look at the word risk on each of those. But so some key things that we really do work on, it would be things like, there's 2 ways to look at a membership program. There's like an automatic, the customer signs up to belong to your program, they receive a package of wine. The hope is that there's very minimal overlap or involvement in that process, so your cost of processing is quite low. We have elected to do a user choice club, and Commerce7 is actually amazing with this opportunity if you haven't really played with it. And so one of the things that we identify for risk is how often does a member order outside of the membership shipment. And we have 2 per year, March and October. So if we only see a steady engagement with just the membership shipment, we start to scratch our head and think, well, maybe the person is just unsure or uncertain of what all their benefits are. Maybe they don't understand how to customize their package. And so we try to make our default package through Commerce7 to be something that meets our goals as the membership program, but also we realize it's the old adage, if you offer 5 jams, somebody's going to pick honey. So we try to pick a package that's in the default area that's somewhat modeled after what the programs are. But then we do look at, okay, so if the customer is only taking that default shipment and they aren't maybe using their complimentary tasting certificates, or are they doing the upsell? We offer a pretty good additional discount on and shipping carrot on the upsell to 12 bottles. So those would be some of the places that we would start with analyzing. And then the now what strategy, once they've been sort of identified. So, a quick example would be if the customer is always taking a default customization of only Pinot Noir and they never order our Chardonnay, we might serve them up some opportunity to think about that Chardonnay. So risk for us means if you're not utilizing all the benefits, we always ask ourselves, is that because we haven't well explained them? And 2, if you aren't using benefits, why would you belong to a club? So we want to make sure that every member, that's our measurement of risk. Are you utilizing your membership?
Right, Kelly, and I appreciate something that you had also said in terms of somebody, you don't let anybody go without a phone call, right? And I feel like that's part for sure of the policy, and maybe it's implicit, or maybe you definitely make sort of an extra effort to do this, but to communicate those benefits. Maybe they just don't know. Maybe they don't know what they are. Maybe they're leaving for a reason that you actually could fix like quickly.
I would agree. I mean, we'll get into this in the other slides, but yes, those are some really important touch points to just better understand who your customer is. I'm going to turn off my phone.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
I thought you were reaching for the Buddha. Or the Buddha behind you.
Yes.
Great. Is there anything else that you wanted to say about the topic of customer at risk, Kelly?
No, I think again, the key thing would be just identify your programs and then identify on your own terms what you believe is a risk factor.
Right. Great. Okay, moving on to the second list, a second recommended list to segment is according to data that's missing. We, Enolytics are big advocates for gathering as much data as possible, like really as much data as possible. And I know that I've written before through Enolytics 101 about 8 key pieces of data that we advocate for tasting room staff in particular, to be sure that they gather about every customer. And there's a lot of analysis and a lot of research kind of behind what happens when you are successful in gathering that information or not. So here is, I love this is part of the research, wineries with tasting room records linked to customer data. Thank you, Commerce7, for putting this out there and sort of looking at the follow-up sales, the follow-through sales, I should say, starting in just with $100 in the tasting room, what happens later on when you've got enough accurate customer data to keep selling to that person. So how do you know if you've got missing data or not? And unfortunately, and this is sort of the traditional way, is actually can be said about all 5 of these lists, is that it's a very manual process. It's hard, it's hard work, and frankly, a fair number of people who work in the industry would rather be out in the vineyards, with their hands in the dirt. So what can you do? You know that data is important. You know that data is valuable. It's a manual process to stay on top of it traditionally. So what are some kind of more, I guess, contemporary or technology-based ways to identify missing data? So here's an example of the ways that, that within the Enolytics system, these are some of the things that we look at. We identify missing data according to birth date. We say, this is valid, this is just missing. This is how you've been doing recently in terms of gathering data. We also look at address quality, email quality, and it's often just missing a dot in the .com, or Gmail is spelled wrong or something like that. We also look at phone quality. Is it an invalid phone number, or are there missing digits? And then we also look at possible duplicate records. So, you could do it this way, absolutely, or you can get a little help from some of the tools that are out there. So Kelly, you've identified the missing data, by segmented lists of missing data. Now what? What happens next?
So this is a great topic because, first of all, garbage in, garbage out. So depending on how you're capturing data, it's extremely important. And to be honest, this has been a head scratcher for us because we operate in the Napa Valley. So it's a high touch point luxury wine tasting experience. And so we work hard to establish trust with our guests before we're pouncing on them for a phone number. So I think part of looking at data for us, we recognize that the data that we capture for a sale is highly accurate because typically the customer needs to process a credit card or have the wine shipped. And often that falls into first, top level, the members. So we are hyper vigilant about working on what data we have for our members. And to Kathy's observation, use your software. So we rely heavily on the credit card update, where if their expiration is just rolling over for another 2 or 3 years, we have baked into our merchant agreement that automatically gets updated if the card number hasn't changed. We also really utilize Commerce7's automated email system, especially for the members, where I think it's about set right now to 30 days prior to their card expiring, we ping them. So the identification of missing data for us really kind of starts with 2 segments. Are they members or are they non-members?
Mm-hmm.
If they're members, then we work really hard to keep that clean. If they're non-members, honestly, we're linked in with MailChimp. So we have the Commerce7 MailChimp synchronization. And that's been pretty helpful for us to just look at open rates, bounce rates, things like that. So we do use also, though, the Enolytics data is very important to get at, as Kathy said, just the real low-hanging fruit on an email. If it's missing a dot, I mean, geez, that's why it's always going to bounce. So we do start with some of that basic data scrubbing. But I think the key for all of this right now is data capture and how to organically get it. And so we've done a number of secret shopping experiences. And the industry average to capture data out of the visitor center is only 18%. We clocked in at 20, but that really wasn't that exciting for us because it just means we're average. So we're looking at ways to create that level of trust, because honestly, we probably, all of us that run a tasting room have the same thing. You have the booker's information, which is wonderful, because again, that's another handshake with Commerce7 and our reservation system that we use, which is Talk. But we don't require, nor have we found an elegant way to solicit the other guests for their data. So maybe a question back to you, Kathy. We've gone back and forth about what are the key things that we need. And of course, again, we like to establish trust before we ask for a phone number, but we feel like maybe asking for a zip code, it doesn't feel as invasive. So we try to at minimum just 4 things: first name, last name, email, and zip code. But what would be happy on a zip code?
Yeah, so it's really fun, and you can get creative actually depending on the kind of, or the fields of data that you do have, right? Like for example, if you only have an email address, that's a little bit of a no-brainer where you can just email those people. And if you know maybe something more about them, like that they've bought Chardonnay or they've bought Pinot or something like that, then you can start there, and you can incentivize them, with through the email to help you gather more of the accurate information. Another one I love is around birth dates. And to your point earlier about, how much information are people willing to give up sort of right off the bat. How old are you, Kelly? Like, and when's your birthday? Like, I don't know that that's necessarily like thing number one, right? Yet we can definitely see in the data that there's clearly a default birth date that just gets put in, like January 1st, 1970. You'd be amazed how many people were born on January 1st, 1970. But yet that data is so valuable in terms of helping to segment by generation, so that are you talking to Gen Z? Are you talking to boomers? Who are you talking to, and how can you tailor the message to that particular group of people? Yeah.
And if I may add also, I think it's important, and this is less asking your customer rather than, making sure you have your right processes in place, but make sure that when that you always have a record linked to your sales associates, so you can kind of track the performance of your sales associate. And if someone does leave your club, take the time to actually document the reasoning why they leave your club, because later on, that reason might no longer be valid. They might still be an evangelist for your winery. So these are the kind of good pieces of data to capture. There's about 7 of them.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, we are looking at a slightly more, again, elegant, refined way. So I think the one great thing that the pandemic has helped catapult everybody into this online space is the QR code. So restaurants use that with a ban, and you wouldn't even get a menu anymore. You just got this QR code. So we're actively building a QR code for our on-site guests, where they would be redirected to some space that's a bit playful. So we've got a quiz on one mock build out. We've got another sort of wine horoscope, if you will. And of course, the only way you can get your results is to give the first name, the last name, and the email. We're looking at not buggering up our hosts, who are really trying to just provide a really high level of entertainment and education on the wine experience, and then maybe leave something that's subtle, but also direct. And to be honest too, we've tried out everything. We've just tried bluntly to say, like you're out, Kathy, hey, it's an alcoholic beverage space. What's your birth date? We've even tried that, because again, a lot of these systems allow for a scan of your driver license or something like that. None of this feels, it worked when we were not running such a high touch point experience. When we were doing more of a bar service, it was easier to do a little bit less trust on grabbing that data. So
yeah, I really like the idea of the QR code, Kelly. And I see it being put to use in different ways. Baldacci is a very high touch environment. Great tasting room furniture. I just want to say I was there last week. It was amazing. But also I also see it with high volume, high turnover wineries who do a lot of events using QR codes in really, really creative ways. For example, you show up for the event, maybe it's a concert, and you scan the QR code and you get entered to win a backstage pass, that's being offered that night or something like that. So I think that people are getting really creative about using QR codes as a way to flesh out missing data, which is so valuable.
And if people are wondering why this is on the list of why is this on the list of segmentation and being able to grow your business, having missing data is actually an opportunity to reach out to your customers and talk to them.
Yeah, great. Thanks. All right, so moving on to list number 3, Kelly. So customers at risk and customers to watch. And you mentioned earlier that for you, people, the people at risk may not be the people at risk for other wineries, or you could be calculating that differently. So I'm curious to know more about your perspective on this. But here is sort of not even a wine industry specific statistic that I love. So increasing customer retention. Fishing in your own pond, basically, by just 5% increases profits by that much, by 25 to 95%. The numbers for the wine industry specifically, or even for Baldacci specifically, I feel like could be really interesting to flesh out even a little bit further. How is it done traditionally? I've literally seen desks, like major, like big long desks of spreadsheets, trying to figure out what do we ship, especially if it's an allocation model, who bought what, when, and it just makes me kind of want to hit my head against the wall. But there's other ways to do it, a more automated way. Here is on the left a look at customer RFM classification. RFM stands for how recently, how frequently, and how much, or monetary spend that the customer had historically. And so you can see that it's looking at customers who are passives, or customers who are loyal, or customers who are loyal but to watch, or customers who are loyal but at risk. And just notice that that's a different kind of representation than the revenue generated by those customers, by those loyal and top customers. So in the image on the left, it's the orange box there. And that is, you're drilling down into the loyal customers. But then when you look just specifically at the revenue generated by those loyal and top customers in the past 4 months, I mean, look at sort of the outsized performance of those. Yeah. So Kelly, so you've identified, talk to us about this part of how you approach even identifying customers at risk, and what you do about it once you know who they are.
So we touched on this a little bit earlier. We really break apart, are you a member or are you a non-member? So if you're a member, we do have a different risk tolerance and a different risk or retention strategy. And I think I touched on this as well. Are we sure that those members at risk are properly utilizing all of their benefits? Have we done a proper job of informing them of why this membership is so valuable? So I'm going to key in a little bit more now about the non-members and where we would start to consider loyalty, retention. And again, this isn't news to anybody, but we're a primarily DTC model winery. So we are trying to create this funnel, and we need at the top of the funnel to have solid data on what our customers are doing with us. And we look at that in a number of ways, what products, but also how are they interacting with us. And one of the things that we really know is if we do a good job of capturing data for the guest that's been here in person, we have a really strong opportunity to do more with them downstream. And so those start off as, we consider anybody that takes time to visit with us here as loyal, because we rarely have anybody that doesn't purchase. But then where we start looking at the risk tolerance on that original customer acquisition, what's the frequency of their purchasing? What is the bucket of goods that they've made the purchase through? So for example, is it always cab? What is their average order value? So those are some analytics data points that are really crucial to our kind of creating this funnel or journey that we want people to travel on with us, because we then start to look at if the customer is always purchasing maybe in the last 18, 24 months, just a 1 or a 2 bottle, then we try to make sure that they understand that we make other products, or that we might be able to do an online experience with them with maybe just those products. So a lot of that has to do with just looking at the slide that Kathy showed prior, where the system is identifying largely based on revenue. We don't get to, our wine is expensive, so the revenue is really more of a starting place for us than the number of orders that a customer might place. And then the last thing that we really look at, again, it's back to if they're not a member, but they are within our drive market, we might do some little things for them. For example, serve them up a secret menu. And you can do this really well with Commerce7 and your tagging of customers, and then also creating a collection. And so that really has worked well for us also. So maybe we see that it's a non-member, they purchase from us twice a year. Maybe it's more around our new releases. We might start to, after 4 purchases, get a pattern of what they are up to, and then we try to give them a little secret menu thing that might initiate, oh, dip into our hooks, our shipping benefits, or come to the winery and have a curated tasting with us, things like that. So again, all the way back to the top, where do we start, member or non-member? And then from a loyalty perspective, if they've made a purchase from us, we classify them as loyal because honestly, they wouldn't have made the purchase. So then it's more about holding on to them, either having a consistent opportunity to get a sale out of them, maybe twice, 3 times a year, or get them on that journey to membership.
And I think that's a very good point, what you're saying, you consider them loyal because they purchased, and then it's trying to keep on to them. And so this is where this whole RFM analysis comes in really nicely. So, well, excuse me, when we talk about customers at risk and oh, excuse me, customers at risk and customers to watch, that's really when they glide out of that loyal group and they go and they haven't bought in a longer time. So the whole idea is then pull them back into that group. This is where you can do marketing campaigns.
And Kelly, I love that you classify members versus non-members and treating them and managing that differently, but also drive market versus non-drive market. What do you consider drive market?
Somebody that would not spend the night here to be in the Napa Valley. So it's typically kind of a big perimeter, Sacramento, Bay Area, up north, maybe to as far away as Fort Bragg. It's interesting how many people come from north.
And you had also mentioned transferring complimentary tasting certificates. Can you talk about that a little bit as a perk?
Membership. So if you're a member, one of your key benefits, especially if you are in the non-drive market, our tasting certificates are complimentary depending on your membership level, and they are transferable. So we do have a lot of out-of-state members who will gift their tasting experiences. And so, yeah, that falls specifically into our membership retention, making sure they even know that this is a benefit.
Right.
That's a great idea.
And it is a great idea. And you've mentioned this a couple of times, Kelly, is updating and just making sure that the members know what are the benefits of being a member. And I feel like it's just a message that needs to be continually redelivered.
I think it does. And I will offer, now we've been 4 years in this particular model, maybe 5, where annually we send a print letter. And this will go all the way back to the beginning of our conversation about updating data, making sure that the data is clean. And so every member gets a printed letter that's signed by Michael Baldacci. And it just, on the second page, it's just a nice letter that says, the normal things. Thank you. We're so happy to have you as part of our club. We love everything that you do with us. But on the back side, it's just a recap of the data that we have on the member. And I mean, I don't know about everybody else in the audience, but our membership is sort of trending slowly to a little younger. So maybe within another 3 to 5 years, this printed piece won't be as impactful. But I tell you what, it has triggered the most robust response for that's not my address or that's not my telephone number. So we really do still believe in this once a year printed letter.
That's fantastic. I didn't know that you were doing that, Kelly. That's a great idea. That's a great idea.
And just, I think you're very right, Kelly. Clean data is very important. You also got to make sure that your data doesn't become stale. So having it constantly refreshed and making sure it's clean, but also up to date is a very important point. So to Kathy's point, when she says the traditional way of capturing this data is a lot of spreadsheets and putting this, if you have to keep doing that every month, that's extremely labor intensive. So technology definitely can be a friend here.
I agree. And Commerce7, if those of you in the audience, we've been taking a deep dive into the meta tags on the customer record. And so I'm looking forward to using that with the Enolytics reporting utility to get even more granular immediately on some of these key touch points. We happen to have a dog here at the winery, so that's just one of our fun little things, like, do you have a dog? But it is a way to be engaged. So
yeah, fabulous. Great. Thank you. All right, moving further into list 4, we've got 2 more to go here. And this gets to Chris's question earlier about identifying or trying to find out why somebody actually has left the club. And this inspired a really interesting conversation as Kelly and I were preparing for today. Do people have, what reasons do people give for leaving the club? Is it too much wine? But what does too much wine mean? Does it mean that you just have too much in your cellar, or just too much of one thing? Or is it too expensive to buy more wine, or all sorts of things? So really kind of spending a little bit of time on this segment of your list. What are the reasons for leaving a club? So historically or traditionally, you kind of like somebody says that they're leaving, or they're dropping off, and you kind of look at them with sad puppy dog eyes, right? And you go, but why? So it's, it's a sad moment. But here's sort of a typical example of when wineries do track the reasons why people are leaving. Maybe they're switching to another club, or maybe there's too much wine, or maybe there's financial reasons. But the other, look at sort of kind of the over, how popular other is a reason for leaving the club. But here's a little bit of a drill down into that. These are your best customers who, and we've just kind of looked specifically at past club members. So customers who have left the club, and look at the club cancel reason, which is toward the right-hand side of the screen here. Maybe it was COVID, maybe no reason was given, or maybe people are just kind of being personal about it. But it's if you start adding up the lifetime spend, if you start adding up the lifetime orders, it's really a significant thing. But that club cancel reason also gives you a lot of information to work with when you want to go back and sort of re-engage that customer who has dropped off. Great. So Kelly, over to you. Talk to us about this part, the dynamics of this particular segment.
So I also feel like I should state, because neither one of us said this, none of the data that's being presented is Baldacci. This is test data that's provided by Enolytics. So I just want to make sure everybody's thinking.
Thank you.
I'm not answering specifically to those slides because I have no idea actually who these people are. So when we look at reasons for leaving, I do have a pro tip for those of you that are putting your customers on hold in the membership program. So if you have a membership program and you put your customer on hold, we've discovered, and I'll let Zach weigh in if this is no longer true, that the benefits, even though the membership's placed on hold, the benefits are still available. And since we rely a lot on different members levels that have discounting, we don't want a customer that is on a membership hold to have any access to the benefits. So our strategy, or our way of looking at things, is if a member calls and says they want to cancel, our first preference is to always chat with them. And it's not to try and engage in the art of rhetoric and persuade them to stay in the membership program. It has more to do with, just as Kathy pointed out, what exactly maybe is going on in their world. And so we do find often that, coming all the way back to the same old grind, they don't always understand their benefits. And so they feel like they're members, but they don't really get to do anything more than just get the wine twice a year. So, and then I think because we are a cab house, the point of having too much wine often really means they have too much wine in their cellar. And so then we would start thinking about ways to offer them up an online experience. We might provide a bunch of recipes to have them friends, a group of people together, do a little quick cook. And we talk about an old and a new wine. We might, because they are members, we might even do a little additional freight subsidy to get the current release to them to compare with the old wine. Zach, sorry, I dragged you into this. So is that true? If you're on hold, you still have the benefits?
Yeah, that's true. If you're on hold, you still have the benefits. I'll just kind of weigh in here as well. What we've seen some wineries have a lot of success with is, they'll have, I guess, a more flexible club option with our subscriptions that's kind of hidden from the customers. So the customer can't find it on the website. It's not really pitched at the winery. And, if somebody wants to go on hold or they want to cancel, they'll kind of use that as an opportunity to pitch this hidden club that's got them more flexibility, that might kind of meet their needs a bit more. But as you're saying, it's good to give them a call, figure out what the true issue is, if it really is too much wine or too frequent or something like that, or the benefits aren't applicable. it might be an opportunity to kind of push them into, not push them, but help them into another club that kind of meets the needs a bit better there.
That's interesting because yeah, we have a hidden club. It's not something that we offer up front, but you are right. If you start at the top and then we have the two, and then if you are trying to opt out of the listed or frontline bottom membership program, we would ask if they wanted to consider the other, but it's really not our first preference. So again, our view of it is it's like being a little bit pregnant. You either are or you are not. So hold for us really has no meaning because it doesn't work for, to be honest, we feel it's a little punitive to the members who are still doing everything that they're supposed to be doing to vest their membership. And so the benefit should really just be going to them. But
So
anyway,
what do you,
back to, oh, go ahead, Chris.
so what do you do then, Kelly? Do you just say then that do you just cancel them then?
We do
So that
cancel
you
them,
do
but
cancel
we
them.
cancel them after ideally having a conversation. And if we get ghosted 2 times on a phone call, then we do put copious notes in. And one of you brought up, I think it was you, Chris, it's always tied back to a sales associate. So we do make sure that any notes and everything, there is a path or a tracer on those notes, because sometimes you do glean as something that you might not be. But yes, we definitely cancel. Well, as Zach pointed out, we try to maybe put them into another non frontline membership program, but if it's fine, honestly, again, our view of the world is if they don't want to be a member, then that's going to cost us a lot more effort in trying to retain them. So there's, but then, I mean, some of the other things, and Kathy and I touched on this a little bit, and I'll just throw this out, maybe it'll come up back in the chat. Our demographic has been on the older side. So we've been a winery since 1998. We've had a pretty consistent membership program since the early 2000s. And we have a lot of members, honestly, that are 6-7 year members. And I think it has a lot to do with they like the family vibe. Let's just leave it at that. But they're a little bit on the older side. So maybe like 55 plus. One of my kind of hidden questions, which I haven't had the nerve to ask anybody yet, is, are you substituting cannabis for alcohol? And are you reducing your just alcohol consumption on kind of that regular basis? Let's pop a bottle at night for a couple. And are you going to cannabis now, maybe 3-4 times or during the week, and you save your wine for the weekend? Because something is instinctively telling me that overall people 55 plus are just being a little bit more mindful about their every week alcohol consumption. So anyway, that's just a little, I don't know where we could get Chris some data on that.
Yeah. That's it. But it's a really interesting question. And I wonder if it's possible, or any of us brave enough to add that into the list of reasons why people leave.
Well,
because
yes, and sorry, Kathy, but one of the things, as Commerce7 really controls the reasons, so you can't create your own reasons. I think it's very important for the audience to know, use the note, the cancellation note, but
Correct.
make sure that you have a that you're consistent in filling that out, always the same thing, so that you don't have suddenly 100 different terms actually saying the same thing. Use the same terms. That way you kind of are creating discrete data, and we can, and we or you can then more easily take action on it because it's nicely grouped. So definitely use that cancellation note.
Yeah, Kelly, also to the point of maybe people aren't drinking as big of wine or as high alcohol wine, you suggested that maybe offering a lower alcohol version, if that's the reason that people list.
That's very true. And again, we found a lot of success with having the custom club option or custom membership option, because it does give us a lot of opportunity to retain a member, but help put their basket together in maybe a way that fits their new lifestyle.
Great. Thank you. In the interest of time, Kelly, we are cruising along here, but I'm like, this is so interesting. And thank you for being such an interactive co-presenter. Okay, so last one is looking at non-club members who have made a lot of purchases. And this goes back to your point earlier, Kelly, about you really talk about, are they members or are they non-members? So so I'd like to kind of drill down into this a little bit further, again, supplemented by a piece of information from Commerce7. A little bit above is the average number of orders before a member joins a club, is what Commerce7 has found, which is why we're looking specifically at non-club members who have made 4+ purchases. So traditionally, how can you tell if a purchase was a gift? Actually, something that we look at here is being able to identify the likelihood of a customer giving a gift, and it has to do with the number of orders that you can see sort of from one of the columns here, the number of orders that the different customers have made all time. If they've ordered 77 or 34 even different times and sent it to different addresses, basically, that's one of the ways that we identify whether that's actually been a gift or not, or whether that person's a heavy gifter. We also look at things like net sales all time and AOV all time, and how many, and look at all of them that have never been a club member. So Kelly, this is sort of who we're talking about this time, people who purchase a lot, who are not members of the club. So you've identified that those are the people. So now what do you do next?
Well, again, it does depend on, so if we've identified the metric that you just showed, the number of orders, but they're all single bottles. So we would segment them into we do have a corporate gifting program. And again, it's another page that's on our website, but it's hidden. You have to have the link to see it, but it does offer a program. So I believe that's a great starting point, because we do find that we have a lot of customers that do order a ton of single bottles, where we also, though, start looking at that single bottle order data, but on a much lower frequency. So maybe they order 3 or 4 bottles 3 or 4 times a year. We try to then get in front of them and say, again, we create as a funnel. So we don't try to go straight to membership, because we do believe that has a lot of trust that you need to build up. But we would definitely go to the area of, hey, you know what, if you just add 2 more, we have different shipping carrots at 3, 6, and 12 bottle carts. And so if we see a customer that's consistently buying 1 bottle, maybe 3 or 4 times a year, we might do 1 of 2 things. Say, hey, would you be interested in purchasing 3 bottles twice a year? You'll save on the shipping. And that way it gives us a little indicator of, oh, well, maybe they would, on that next conversation, next engagement, be more receptive to the membership program, because then you can even say, oh, you're consistently purchasing 3 bottles at a time. You're taking advantage of this. Would you like a better shipping opportunity? Would you like a shipping opportunity with discounts? So we do look at those type of patterns. We also look at, if it's a customer that every year orders 1 case, so then we definitely reach out to them too and say, okay, we're blunt here in this area. If they're ordering a case of cab and they're not a member, we just tell them you're leaving money on the table. I mean, honestly, that's like the just simplest thing to communicate. We also do look at heavily whether they are in that drive market or not. And so if it looks like they're in the drive market, they come visit with us, at least a couple times a year. We do try to bend them a little bit towards a membership program because of the complimentary tasting opportunity. So those would just be some quick things. That's great. Thank you. Yeah.
And just to that point, I think this is all very interesting, by the way, and great point on your corporate gifters. What we've also seen, by the way, is that holidays like Valentine's Day, and then obviously close to the regular holidays, Christmas and New Year's, lots of people that are not corporate gifters actually do go online and start buying gifts. So segmentation based on that and saying these are the people that are actually gifters, they might not be corporate gifters, but they're gifters, is a very successful campaign that you can run every year. Just remind them, hey, last year you bought from Baldacci, for 5 people, maybe you should do it again this year, right? So that's a very interesting segmentation too. And when you were talking about drive drive market and non-drive market. It's also nice that systems like Enolytics actually can tell you how far a customer lives from the winery, as long as you capture that zip code, right? If you have that, we can actually tell you how far they live from the winery. And then you can do things like that. Or you could even just say, if you have an activity at the winery, now you can actually invite people that are within driving distance.
Yeah, great. Okay, so in the interest of time, I want to allow some time for any Q&A or kind of chat feedback. So just a couple of other ways, a sort of bonus material here to segment and gain share of wallet. Just an overview of the data segmentation tips. So obviously, and we've said this a couple of times, collect as much data as you can in a friendly, approachable way. Categorize your data in order to create cohorts or create target groups according to different rationales. Enhance the data where you can. If you can run an algorithm based on first name that tells you gender, if the person is likely to be registered as male or female or androgynous or unknown, and then keep your data fresh. Keep refreshing the data, keep updating the data. And Kelly, I really, really love the idea of the printed, and this is sort of, we're talking a lot about technology, but it's a very analog way to send a printed actual letter, but then on the reverse, having that specific customer data, that's really a great idea. And I just wanted to revisit two other slides from Brooks Winery. Janie Hook was a guest on our last webinar with Commerce7. And the point here was that we were looking at the data, and this is how her customers broke down according to that gender algorithm. And just have a look at those different lists of top 5 wines according to gender. But then look at, if we were to sort of go a little bit further and look at male boomers versus female millennials, they're very different lists. So here's just male and female. That list is different enough in itself, but then also looking at according to generation. So just underscoring the point of how granular it's possible to get through the technology, and how much more customized the outreach is to those different people, to those different customers.
And these are interesting lists to have, because in Commerce7, you can kind of start proposing other wines, right? So if you have that data, you can actually feed that in, and that's nice to have.
Yeah, just a couple of communication outreach or marketing kind of strategies according to the persona, or to the cohort or the segment that you've had. Language around millennials versus boomers. Do they prefer a text message versus an email? Male, female, geography, this part of the country versus that part of the country. Is it a springtime or is it winter? Are we talking about rosé, or are we talking about a heavier cab? And then finally, let me extend this offer to Commerce7 customers on the call, and who will see the recording afterwards. We invite you to try it out. 30-day money-back guarantee with a discount on an annual subscription. No setup fee. There's a robust support portal with a lot of masterclasses and videos going on in the background. And we keep wanting to make the interaction better. So the first 5 customers are invited to join, who take advantage of this offer, are invited to join a Commerce7 specific advisory board to help us keep making it better. So let me sort of invite Kelly back in to answer any questions that may have come in through the chat.
I like that one from Stephanie.
Mm-hmm.
Great question. So honestly, the 2 areas that I think are priority is wine club or membership retention, and then what we would term lost sales. So looking at customers that are non-members that did purchase at least 18 months ago, but have not purchased in the last 6 months.
So, sorry to interrupt here, Kelly, but I don't think the audience could see the question. So the question was, with limited time and many hats, how would you prioritize these lists here? Sorry to interrupt there.
No, that's fine. I had to squint to read it anyway. So anyway, that's where I would start. If you have either an existing membership program or you want to create one, I think that would be a great place to start. So either, grow your membership program and or work on retention, and then lost sales. Honestly, I think we've all really underscored that it's super, super challenging to acquire a new customer with a cold start to our brand. So if we already have customers that have shown their loyalty through a purchase, we should continue working on improving to the greatest extent possible how much purchase we can get out of that non-member.
Great. Zach, did you see any other questions come through?
Yeah, if anyone has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat here. Awesome to have Kathy, Chris, and Kelly on, and so it's a great opportunity to kind of get some insight there. Any questions,
Absolutely.
definitely please put them in the chat here.
Kelly, you're very entertaining. Tell us more about the recipe box of your customers and how it used to be. I need a new graphic of that. Rather, to drop in. That's just a great story. I know I'm going to be coming back to.
Yes, a lot of it relied on handwriting, so that's a key piece.
Yeah.
I think again, for those of you in the audience, if you're really trying to understand what data can do for you, I would sort of try and visualize a world where you are having to pay for every customer, and it's such a non-predictive return on your investment. So I'm thinking of things, for example, digital advertising, which many of us have run down that rabbit hole hard. I think it's going to make a lot more sense to spend a little time with your current data and figure out what you can do in-house without spending any money to just better understand who customers are.
I love that. That's a nice note to end with, don't you think, Zach?
I do. I guess one question I would have is, what's the best way for anyone watching today or watching the recording to get in contact with you, Kathy?
Yeah, let me just go on the next slide. That's just my contact information. You could, do it the old-fashioned way and send me a letter. No, just kidding. You could do it the old-fashioned way and send me and pick up the phone and call me. Or of course you could email or schedule the demo through the website. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Kathy. It's great to have you and Chris and Kelly. Appreciate you all taking the time to present here, and appreciate everybody taking the time to listen in. And look for the recording to be sent out later today. And if you have questions about Enolytics, Kathy's contact info is there. It's a great integration to Commerce7, great system on its own. So definitely recommend you check it out there. But thanks for your time, everyone.
Thank you all so much.
Bye.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Zach.
Thanks.
Bye.
Yep, thank you all. Take care. Bye.